Item 1, call the meeting to order. Call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. Got our usual crew here. All elder persons are present. We've got Michael Tim stepping in for Penscover, who is at the Calvary Baptist Church playing a wise man out in the cold. So if anybody wants to visit him after this, feel free. Item 2, review and consider a lead and galvanized water service line replacement program.
Yeah, I can kick this one off. So tonight we are bringing forward an issue raised by a member of the Waterworks and Lighting Commission and brought to me. That individual is here tonight and may speak to it as well as some other folks from Waterworks and Light. So right now, our residents receive very little support when it comes to replacing private lead or galvanized water service lines. Replacements that can cost thousands of dollars and often occur independently of any city work happening in the same area. I'd like to begin exploring a coordinated approach so that whenever possible, private service line replacement can occur alongside city construction activities. Aligning these efforts could reduce disruption for residents, lower overall project costs, and make a better use of our resources. At the same time, we should all look at available funding opportunities, federal or state programs, as well as models like the program in Wausau to help residents afford these replacements. With new funding made available through legislation signed earlier this year, we may have additional tools to support homeowners who otherwise couldn't take on this expense. And just to clarify why galvanized lines are included in this conversation, although they aren't made of lead, galvanized steel pipes can accumulate lead particles, especially if they are downstream from lead lines, and then release the lead into the drinking water. So creating a similar health risk and making them a priority for replacement as well. The goal of this referral is to improve coordination, secure funding, and to help residents replace both lead and galvanized lines more efficiently and affordably. So with that, unless there's any other comment from committee, I'd open up the floor to Water and Light.
Okay. So I'm Adam Bruning. I'm the water superintendent for the utility. Before I start the slide, I'm going to go to a little background to touch base on what we've done for this, what brought this all up. So in 2014, there was a Flint water crisis. What happened was the city of Flint switched water sources and started pulling water from the Flint River. When that happened, that changed the pH in their water. No one paid attention to that part of the water quality, started leaching from their lead services, and approximately 100,000 people had exceedances over the state's MCL. So that started the crisis, and then all of a sudden the EPA started changing regulations, making revisions to the lead and copper rule. We have been working on this probably since 2014. Starting in 2017 through 2021, we actually participated in the EPA's Principal Forgiveness Program through their Safe Water Drinking Act. And 23 homeowners participated in that and replaced their private services. Those 23 homeowners were reimbursed $107,000 throughout the city. In 2021, regulations changed with that grant or principal forgiveness. So we'll talk about that in the funding part of it. But let's get into the regulation side with the EPA. So the rule that officially came out in 1991 was the first rule with lead and copper that set MCLs. In 2021, they came out with a lead copper rule revision. 2024 is the lead copper rule improvement. And then I will touch base on some upcoming deadlines based on all these regulation changes. So in 1991, they established the lead and copper rule. This regulated the levels of lead and copper in the public drinking water. The regulation is published in the federal code, and that regulation set your lead MCLs at 15 parts per billion and at 1.3 parts per million. So we've been participating in this program since 1991. We typically would test every 3 years, initially 60 sites throughout the city, and then they put us on reduced sampling down to 30 sites. And over that time, we've never had a violation. So we've been able to monitor our lead leaching with pH balancing. So if we keep our pH at approximately a 7.5 to 8, we can keep those levels under that 15 parts per billion that the EPA had generated in 1991 as their regulation. You're allowed 90% of those samples have to fall under that MCL. So if you do have a couple that exceed, you still do not have a violation. So if a violation would occur, then they would put corrosion control methods in place. Then in 2021, they created a revision to this rule. What this did was they wanted us to start creating an inventory of our system. We have an inventory of the public system. We've had that for years. What they wanted was they wanted to know what the private services had. So that's from the curb box to the house, and the public is from the curb box to the main. And so then we started, every time we'd go into a house for a trouble call, every time we'd go in for a cross connection, we'd start documenting what the private side was, and then we'd develop this inventory. Last year, on October 16th, we had to submit the inventory, and that is per the DNR template. It is listed on our website. Every year after that, we have to repost an updated database. It's really a living document. So that living document then goes and gets updated every November approximately. The deadline is December 31st for the update. Once that inventory is updated, we send out consumer letters to every single person that has a lead service, a galvanized service that was impacted by lead, or if they have an unknown service that could be lead. And why they say could be is we have a certain date that we know that lead was last installed in the city. So any house that has an unknown service that was built prior to that date is flagged for unknown, could be possibility of lead. So all three of those those articles then get sent out to the public if that's flagged. In that letter, they'll then return phone calls to us. We'll schedule inspections. It's actually a good resource to every once a year kind of remind them you have these services out there, so contact us. We'll send somebody over. We'll get it inspected. And the ultimate goal is to get this database completely filled. And the DNR does have a requirement that by 2037 that there are no unknowns and that the entire city does not have lead or galvanized. In 2024, they made a lead and copper rule improvements. And so as part of this, we are going to continue with the water inventory. We are required by 2027 to actually have a program in place, submitted to the DNR, and have them approve the program. And in that program, then we have 10 years to remove every single lead service, galvanized impacted lead service in the city. So we have a meter exchange program starting in 2028 through 2030, and we're going to be going into every single residential home and replacing the meters. At that time, we'll be documenting all the private services, and then we will have our inventory complete probably by 2030. And at that point, we'll know exactly how many we have to replace. So the deadline for full replacement and full removal based on the EPA regulations is 2037 on December 31st. And then after everything's been replaced, we have to then supply a 6-month supply of filtration to those customers, because you can have a spike once a lead service is removed. So as part of this new rule that takes place in 2027, every time a lead service is replaced, we will then have to supply filtration in a pitcher format or possibly a sink format for filtration. And I've kind of skipped ahead and started talking about these deadlines, but this is really where the program has to be in place by 2027, and then the first year starts from 27 in November to December 31st, 28, and has to be completed by December 31st of 2037. So the big question mark in all this right now is based on the EPA's language in their ruling, is what they're saying is the municipality and the utility has to replace all lead and galvanized impacted lead services that they have control over. So right now there's court litigation going on between the American Water Works Association, which is favoring that everything in the public right-of-way is what the city has control over. The EPA and DNR are on the opposite side, where they're saying the city has control, where they can put ordinance in place to take control of the private homeowner service. So right now, till that court case is finalized, we don't know if this 10-year ruling will mean we have to change 60 services in the public right-of-way, or we have to change 500, which would be including private and public total. Those are estimated numbers based on a 25% estimate of the unknowns that are still out there. So right now, if you look at this diagram, this is just showing that jurisdiction between public and private. It's all based on the curb box. It's not always placed at the right-of-way. It may be in the boulevard. It could be 10 feet into the property owner's yard, but that's in our ordinance. The curb box is the jurisdiction for public versus private ownership. And if any of you have questions as we go through there, you can stop me and ask rather than wait till the end as well. So now with this, we'll get into the funding side of it. Jeff's going to give a presentation here on what's available out there.
All right, thank you. This is, like Adam mentioned, every year we have to do this living document to say, you know, what are the private side water service inventory. Until that 2021 regulation came about, it wasn't something the utility was concerned about. So that's why you see the number of unknowns is pretty high. And as we get into houses to do things, that's when we're going in and verifying these. So right now, this was right before the letters went out in October. We had a little bit of a push at that point as people let us in their homes to check this, to see what they had in their houses. So we have 180 known lead services, private side lead services. There's 146 that are known galvanized that were impacted by lead, and then there's about 1,000 unknown that might contain lead. Based on history and when we've been going into people's homes, about 25% of those unknowns are likely lead services, but until we get in there, we don't know. So we're looking between 500 and 600 lead services likely, private lead services that would likely need to be replaced. It's about 8% of the total. We have about 7,300 water services in the city. And just kind of so everybody understands that 578 would be about 1/3 landlord properties and about 2/3 private homeowners. When we look at the numbers, it's pretty close to where the properties are themselves. So as we started looking at this, there's two primary funding options. If we wanted to run a program within the municipality, it can be run either by the city or by the utility. If it's run through the municipality, there's no PSC requirements for that program. If it's run by the utility, there's several requirements that the PSC sets to make sure it's equitable, to make sure the ratepayers aren't overpaying different classifications and those kind of things. And we'll walk a little bit through those. Can you see that okay? They call it a utility assistance funding program. So the first thing before you can even have a program set up is you need to have an ordinance in place to say municipality-wide these lead services need to be replaced by such and such a date. And kind of, you know, as Adam mentioned, there's kind of this ambiguity, you know, does the utility have control over these private lead services? PSC's interpretation is that they don't, but if you put that municipal ordinance in place, now you do have jurisdiction over those private lead services. It also requires the utility submit this application. The PSC is going to review the application, make sure it's equitable. They do have several things in place. It can be either grants or loans. If you decide to do grants, the grants are capped at 50% of the cost or the average cost. All customers in the revenue class must receive the same funding level. So we're talking a residential customer, everybody in the residential customer. If it's a $5,000 to replace a lead service, nobody can receive more than $2,500. and any loans that the utility would give out cannot be forgiven by the utility. Again, this is if it's run through by the utility, these are the requirements, and if it's run by the municipality, those requirements aren't required because it's not going to be overseen by the PSC. You can see as of last month, there's about 13 municipalities in the state that actually have a financial program in place right now. The newest one was New Richmond that just got approved in July, but you can see the lists up there. It's a mix between grants and loans, and even the loans are mixed between 1 year and 10 years, so there's definitely a wide range of what these programs look like. Grants, you can see the lowest is about $2,000 up to $5,000. Median's about $2,500. So if utility rates are going to be used to run this program, the costs don't get recovered right away. So you set up this program, and then next time the utility goes in for a rate case, that's when you're going to start looking at recovering some of these costs. And it's a little bit interesting, and the PSC is just working right now on the first rate case that somebody had one of these plans in place. So they're still kind of working out exactly what this is going to look like. But essentially, if your test year, or kind of the year they're looking at for revenue and expenditures, is $150,000, they're going to increase your rates $150,000 for the foreseeable future, assuming you're going to have consistent payments out to the community. Any money that was paid out prior to your rate case is kind of lost at that point, and the utility can't recoup that money. It's just going to be looking at that test year. So one thing to keep in mind here when we're looking at a class of customers, the residential customers are probably the ones everyone's concerned about, including the utility. You know, if we're going to do this program, residential customers are the ones we need to look at. The revenues of just over $2 million, $2,087,000 is our budgeted for 2026. If you had $150,000 in grants that end up being rate-based by the utility, that piece increases rate 7%. So just kind of want everyone to be aware of that.
And that's for everybody? Every water and light customer, or just the ones that need their replacement?
Every customer. So if these costs would be socialized, it would be, rates would be increased if it's a grant to run this program. So there's a couple different funding options, and you know, we sat down a couple months ago and we started looking at, you know, what are the opportunities to help out the community with this program. The first thing that came up was some of the PFAS settlement money that the city and the utility has been getting. Right now, we know about $500,000 of PFAS money will be coming to the utility between now and 2034, I think, 2032, 2034. We've gotten most of that money already, about $340,000 is at the utility. There's no PFAS mitigation at this time that the utility needs to do. Our numbers are extremely low. So that's money that can help out the community. If we wanted to rate base any of these costs, you've got that ability to recover in future rate bases. Adam and I, we did do the Principal Forgiveness Program pre-application through the State's Safe Drinking Water Fund. We're getting notifications that principal forgiveness is unlikely going forward just because that money is starting to dry up. We could do loans from the Safe Drinking Water Fund. Again, that's money that's going to have to be paid back with interest. If it's a municipal program, you know, there's obviously the tax levy process to fund these programs like this. And there's other options. We reached out to the Legacy Foundation just to see, is that a public health issue that's something that they might want to fund. We're going to definitely do the application come early 2026 to see if that's something we might be able to get for the community. So just kind of a couple things to think about, and kind of at the utility, we're also thinking about these things. You know, it's really this chicken or an egg thing. You know, if we're going to do a financial assistance program, we're going to have to come to the council and ask them to pass an ordinance. And how comfortable is the council going to be to pass an ordinance not knowing the funding level on the backside and what the Public Service Commission is going to allow us to do? Is it fair or equitable to socialize these costs amongst all the ratepayers in a class for these customers that have lead services if you're going to recover this through the rates? Do we want to do grants and loans? If you do loans, is that something we want to put on the tax bill as kind of like the special assessments used to be, and you run a 10-year special assessment through that? Can we put it on the utility bill? Again, length of time for these loans, is it, I mean, you saw before, it went from 1 year to 10 years as far as how long you want to run these programs. And under the PSC, we cannot forgive these loans, so what's going to happen in those instances if somebody moves out and the closing company doesn't catch this expense sitting out there? You know, what's going to happen to this cost? Are we going to go after the previous homeowner and try to collect this money? Just questions to think about. And another big one, just to keep in mind, once you have this ordinance enacted, come 2037, you know, if there's people that haven't changed this, is the direction the city and the utility want to do is disconnect the water service if these things aren't replaced. So essentially, without a potable water service, you know, that house becomes uninhabitable, not something someone can be living at until that lead service is replaced. All options through the Public Service Commission, those tariffs can be updated once you have this program. It's just, you know, where does the city want to go with this? I'll turn it back over to Adam.
So now we're going to get into the collaboration between Public Works, Engineering, and us. So Joe has a nice 5-year CIP plan that he's put together for you guys that we can go and double check with our inventory system. We'll be able to determine ahead of time before these projects happen which are the sites that need to be replaced. Now, all of this would obviously dictate, is there an ordinance in place then that you can force the owner on these CIP projects to replace their side if we go that direction. If the homeowner wants to replace it without an ordinance, we would need their consent for the utility or the city to do it. Typically, when we've done these principal forgiveness loans in the past, it was all contracted out by pre-qualified plumbers based on the federal regulations. So we had to post an RFQ out to the public, and we would only get approximately 2 or 3 plumbers that would actually meet those regulations. And so it does create kind of a bottleneck. I mean, the whole trades area right now is a bottleneck on the whole program. If you had to replace 500 or 600 services, do we have enough contractors or plumbers in town over the next 10 years to do it? That's a different question, but you know, if we put a program in place as we do these CIPs, that would be where we would hit probably the first initial lead service replacements. We replace all the public ones right now. You're not allowed to do full replacements on only service replacement projects, but when you're doing full infrastructure replacement, you're allowed to do partial replacements as of now. Once 2027 hits, that regulation may change. So really, this is going to be dictated on, do we have an ordinance? Can we then force those homeowners as we go through these CIPs to change out their side? But that's kind of, the ordinance is the big question on everything here. So we do have, I did reach out to the larger cities in our central Wisconsin here that to kind of do a peer evaluation, as Ryan suggested, comparables. I've looked at the WASA system. So what they do, they run a third party through, they call it the Equal Flow Lead-Free program. It's a third party that is the Community Infrastructure Partners, they call it the CIP, and they administer their inventory system. They administer going into homes and doing inspections and figuring it all out, and then they coordinate it with the contractors to come and replace it. So the city really kind of washed their hands of it and then just pushed it off to a third party. And they do have an ordinance in place, so they probably had funding for that they can go to the administrative side of it. And so that's kind of how WAS is running their program. Stevens Point, they've eliminated all public lead services, and they're currently gathering data on the private lead services. They aren't replacing any of the private lead services yet because they don't have a mandatory ordinance in place at this time. Marshfield just implemented a ordinance this spring, and so they're doing it all in-house. They have an inventory similar to us where we've done it all in-house, and now they're starting to go through their program and replace their public and private at the same time due to their ordinance. I have communication with one of their water managers, and he said what's happening is with all the non-compliance people, the people that aren't working with them, they're pushing them to the back of the program, and then they will address it at the end of it. Right now, they have fines in place if they don't comply, so it starts out at $50 a day, then it'll go up to $250 a day, and then it'll eventually go to water disconnection. So that's how Marshfield does their ordinance. So with all that said and done, you know, but based on the court litigation, and if we do the ordinance, don't do the ordinance, there are some variables out there to consider before we make this decision. Some of you might get kickback from your areas if you do this, because you'll be forcing them to replace their service, which is at approximately going to be $5,000 to $6,000 on average. So you might get some public backlash over it. You know, is it the right thing to do? Most likely removing all lead from the groundwater is the right thing to do. So it'll be a couple things that the council will have to decide and how we move forward. So just to let everyone know that the goal is to have a program in place by that November deadline of 2027. And we'll be submitting that to the DNR at that time. So by that point, I'm hoping the litigation is done, and then we can make a decision if we're going to do that ordinance, or we can do it ahead of time and just replace what we want at that time, even before that happens. I guess if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask.
My first question would be, what would your recommendation be based on, you know, your experience, PSC or municipal route?
I would recommend to go the municipal route personally, to try to avoid all the PSC regulations and loopholes that we'd have to go through. So the two options we've looked at, and you know, we like the legacy idea. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll have to put in that application to see if it's available. Otherwise, we do have that PFAS money. So the question is, we give the municipality a chunk of that, they administer it, we can avoid all the PSC regulations then we have to go through with the funding process. So those are kind of our two options we're leaning on, rather than socializing the whole thing or going through the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program or what's out there left in money, because I envision it's going to be gone before we even get it approved in 2027.
And that was one of the requirements. So even with that pre-application we did, once we get to the application next summer, having that ordinance in place is kind of a key step, even with that principal forgiveness and the Clean Water Fund funding coming forward next year. So.
Yep.
Okay, so the plan goes into place in 2027. You have 10 years to comply. At that point, what penalties would the city or Waterworks and Light receive if there were uncompliant residences?
So they haven't announced any, they'll list you as non-compliant, and so how it works, with the DNR is you get listed as non-compliant, and then you'll end up having to make a public notice that you're non-compliant, and then they'll give you a time frame to become compliant. If you still don't, then they start fining you, and eventually it could go as far as take over by the state. But you know, I've never heard of anything get that far. So the main thing is they list you as non-compliant. If you don't meet their deadline, public notifications go out.
And then lastly, speaking to the program.
We would turn off the water, right?
Yep, so that's one of the things that you'd have to change the tariff, and then you could turn off the water.
Okay. Lastly, speaking to the program that you mentioned, the Equiflow lead-free program in Wausau.
Yep.
I mean, news releases to me, and maybe I should have studied up a bit more on it, but it seemed like a lot of the costs were being covered by this program. Is that not the case? Homeowners are still having to pay?
It is, because they have federal money for it. So they have this safe drinking water money because they have an ordinance in place.
Yep.
Because you can't get the money without it. And so they went through all the loopholes to get the funding for it. They have it, and now they're applying it. I believe to most of their CIP jobs that are going out there, that's what they're starting with their replacements.
But,
go
but
ahead.
you would recommend that we hold off on creating an ordinance until we know the results of the litigation?
Uh,
I got a question that I think should be posed before we answer that. And I brought this up to you, Ryan. And Joe has a plan for replacing a lot of streets. If you look at what we did over here on the north side this year, we tore up those streets and we did replace the lead on the public side. Very few homeowners replaced on their side. But their cost will be much more when they go to replace it now. If they had replaced it, well, the sidewalk is gone and the yard is torn up, okay? Their cost would be much less. So if we delay this ordinance and don't force them to do it, every time we do one of these streets, not only will be forcing them to pay extra money to do the job because we haven't an ordinance. It just seems to me that the ordinance is a requirement to minimize the cost to the homeowner as we do this. It could be worded in such a fashion that when the public side is replaced, when the road and the sidewalks and so on are reconstructed, you must replace your lead service. That would be perhaps a separate ordinance than the one that we would pass in 27, okay? But at least as we do what, Joe, you've got 2 or 3 scheduled for next year, right? Where we'll likely have these lead services in place. And we can cross-check inventories to make sure we take care of them as the street is taken care of. I just read ahead for some of your plan, and I'm seeing that you're definitely going to be doing similar construction to what we did on the north side this year.
yeah, there's 4 main projects, so 2nd Street North, East Jackson, 16th Street won't have any. And so 2nd Street North is probably the only one that has probably most likely potential based on its age. I wouldn't expect any on 16th Street. Or Pepper. Pepper's all going to be 3/4 inch copper most likely. So that is an option if you want to do a preliminary ordinance. Now, it still has to be stated in the ordinance as citywide. We can't just make one just based on CIP areas, but we could put language in there to talk that those are the areas that will be required to be replaced, and then eventually get to the whole city after that.
So in summary, for those following along from home that might not have heard the gentleman's comments, it behooves us to create an ordinance as soon as possible. And when 2027 rolls around, if we need to modify that ordinance, that would be the time to do it.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I would anticipate that Water and Light would assist the city with the creation of said ordinance?
We already have a draft ordinance.
Perfect.
We had a technical assistance program through the EPA 2 years ago it started. And one of the things they did with us was to draft up an ordinance. We're going to run it through our legal counsel. It is 15 pages long, so we're going to try to bring it down a little bit. And then we can run it by legislation and sue and make sure it's going to meet all your guys' standards.
Okay. Well, based on what I'm hearing, I would absolutely be in favor of creating an ordinance at this point, just because, we have a timeline here, and at some point, it could potentially cost the city and or the municipality, and it's something that's going to have to be addressed, not only for the safety of our residents, but to ensure that we're not receiving those fines that were mentioned. So that's where I stand.
I agree. And having the ordinance sooner, while it might be a little bit of a hassle for our residents who are on the CIP pathway, it really does save because they won't have to dig up their yard twice over the course of time, and it's going to have to be done anyway. So I'm in favor of having Waterworks bring forward the ordinance, bring the ordinance back to us after it gets slimmed and run through legal.
I would agree, but I got one more question from you. So the private side, are you guys the ones, you hire out somebody to do that, or can the homeowner say, I'm going to do it myself because I know somebody, or, just to reduce the cost?
Yeah, so on the private side, we can do it with their consent. In the past, we preferred it was all done by the pre-qualified plumbers, because we don't want to take work away from the local plumbers.
Sure.
So us doing it is an option. It is allowed with their consent. And I guess that's going to be up to you guys if you prefer that method.
Okay. Otherwise, you'd have a list of plumbers and say, here's the ones that
Yes,
you could use.
Yeah, they'd have to meet those pre-qualifications like they did last time.
Okay, thank you.
Since we're on that subject, the machines that are used to go underground and put wire, underground services, I know that, if I remember right, it's been used for plumbing lines also? Is that something,
Yeah, I
since we
belie-
have so many services that,
I believe Steve's Plumbing and a couple other, I don't know if Williams does it, but they do trenchless. Now, sometimes that doesn't work. Anytime they run into tree roots or any type of bedrock, then they end up having to open cut it anyway.
Hmm.
But it is an option to do a trenchless boring technology.
okay.
Well, I will make a motion to direct staff to work with Waterworks and Light on the creation of an ordinance for lead service line replacement and removal.
I'll second.
And galvanized, excuse me, and galvanized.
Still second. All right, motion by Austin, second by Palmquist. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you for coming and presenting. We appreciate
Thank you.
your time. Item 3, review and consider removing truck access route designation for multiple roadway segments. Joe?
Thank you. So this is kind of a off and on sort of issue with trucks using various routes throughout the city. It recently came up again as a complaint for using a truck access route that is kind of being used as a through route, kind of just like a truck route would be. So truck access routes were added to the ordinance in an effort to help guide traffic during deliveries and help keep trucks out of residential areas. So the definition of a truck access route is a route a truck must take for deliveries or repairs to a certain area. It is not a through route for truck movements in the city. However, there has been some confusion related to that, especially with some people viewing them as an actual truck route. The truck access routes in reality aren't much different than what is the case for every other street in town, where they're making deliveries, which are the shortest route from a truck route or state highway or county highway. So in an effort to, I guess, reduce confusion, aid in enforcement, and reduce trucks using the downtown area as a through route, especially considering some of the proposed improvements that are being considered for the east side downtown area. We're recommending to remove the truck access routes as listed in the packet and shown on, we've got two exhibits in there, one showing the existing routes and then the proposed changes, which would effectively remove the West Jackson to East Jackson, First Street to Spring Street route, as well as a small route to the former mill site off of Wilson Street.
Any questions, concerns, comments from committee?
Joe, are there signs up that say truck access instead of truck routes?
There are.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's maybe confusing for the truckers, is that, or do they just,
I think it's more out of convenience
Okay.
and maybe some confusion on what a truck access route is meant to be.
okay, so we would take those down?
Yep.
And then educate, okay.
I'm all for this, so I'll move to make a motion to remove the truck access routes as highlighted in the packet.
Second?
We have a motion by Austin, second by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0. Item 4, consider opening corporate limit roadways to ATV and UTV traffic. This is my initial referral and I believe, third time that is coming back to committee for discussion. We now have full maps, but to summarize, I did receive an email about creating a route through the city or opening all city roadways. That is not the intent of this referral. It is simply to discuss the split roads within our municipality. Would you highlight the changes on the map for me, Joe?
Sure, I can run through the changes from last month quick. So we did finish identifying the corporate limit routes, as well as just a very preliminary draft of the signage that would be required. If, all of the viable routes, some of them that are highlighted may not be viable, but the ones that we knew that connected to areas outside of the city to, I guess, continue with an actual route. We did provide a preliminary list of signs. In total, there'd be about 60 signs that would be required. And I think the county actually has some signs that they had previously used that they have an excess of that the city could purchase and utilize in specific cases here at a reduced cost. I did also check with the town of Grand Rapids on their ordinance. And their ordinance is specific to all town roads are open, and so they don't have any particular streets that are not open to ATVs or UTVs. And so talking with their police chief and also with our police chief, there are, I guess, in local traffic enforcement on corporate limit streets, it's dual enforcement. So, a Rapids police officer could pull somebody over for traffic violation, regardless of if they're in the city or in the town on a dual corporate limit street. It's a little bit more confusing for ATVs and UTVs because the ordinances differ. The town allows it and the city doesn't. And so, there's some confusion there on how that could actually be enforced or not. But that's what I found out in that regard. We didn't make any specific recommendations as to, a recommended list of routes other than these are the possibilities.
Thank you. Initial thoughts or questions?
So we can safely say the shared roads by the surrounding municipalities like Grand Rapids or Saratoga are indeed open on their half. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yep. The question is how could it actually be enforced is the
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. One concern to this, I mean, the city does have an ATV, UTV ordinance. Within that ordinance, it requires driver's license and insurance. I'm sure that's going to differ from the ordinances that are in place in these other municipalities. So signage, I think, would have to incorporate that. Would that be a safe assumption?
Yeah, you would definitely have to have signage.
And,
Or do you mean signage in regards to those specific items?
correct. The driver's license and the insurance, just because
That's a
mean,
good question.
I believe, sorry, I believe, well, I know Grand Rapids ordinance also has those requirements. So we don't vary from Grand Rapids. I don't know about Port Edwards, but I'm looking,
has the same restrictions in their ordinance. Signage has been answered. I guess what would it cost and what steps would staff need to finalize this?
I guess if there's some indication of, if all of these that are identified here are all viable routes, or if there's some that aren't viable routes, I mean, certainly we could, like for instance, Whitrock Avenue, or no, I think it was Dove Avenue, that actually, it's a dead end and it comes out to 8th Street. So we highlighted it with a color, but it's not really, that's definitely not a viable option. But Whitrock Avenue from 8th Street roughly to the east, is that a viable route? Would that connect up to 16th Street? There's those sorts of unknowns that, certainly we could make a stab at it, but to create a list, but
I'm
Ma-
open. I can start. I'd say,
Madeline, I think we have a citizen that might want to speak, if that's okay.
come on up, please. Just make sure the green light's on. And then if you could just state your name and address, that'd be great.
The green light is on. My name is Mike Schill. I'm at 205 Blue Heron Lane. I'm representing an anonymous person who lives in this area. That may be me, but don't want to be coy, but I am. I've just found out about this yesterday. I don't know where this discussion's been. There's never been any discussion. Everyone was in uproar about the solar thing and getting letters. This directly affects me. Didn't hear anything about it. Didn't get any letters, didn't ask for my input. I just saw the maps this morning and I was a little confused because, like Blue Heron, where I live, that's supposed to be open now? I don't know. Is that in the ordinance? Will it be in the ordinance? When we talk about ordinance for the city, there is no ordinance. The ordinance is no ATVs. So how are you going to enforce this? Right now, it looks like Pepper, and Mr. Vollert would know too, is can people from Grand Rapids use half of Pepper for an ATV route? Is that what the implication is by this map that shows it is? I don't know. If so, there are not anybody on Pepper from the sewage plant to that first street that actually are adjacent property owners that have access to it. If they're going to use their backyards, I would assume there's ordinances against using public right-of-way to get to the street. So that's going to be an issue. The big issue I see with First Street, that whole street, there's no property owners besides the Airport Commission, whomever. Who's going to need that? There should be no reason to have that as an ATV route. Because if someone is going to use it, once again, they're going to be going through a public right-of-way to get to that. I don't know. It just, and I'm not totally opposed to ATVs. It's just kind of like, we weren't made any notification of this. I've already had one ATV, UTV come down on Blue Heron, do a turnaround, no big deal. But I don't know. This is, there's no public hearing. Why wasn't there a public hearing for this? We've had one for the solar, and everyone was, having a big deal about that. Sorry, I don't know. Anybody got questions for me? How it's going to affect me? I don't know. But I don't know how you're going to enforce this. I mean, how do you enforce it right now? Do we need an ordinance for UTVs for the city to enforce when they're going to be using our right-of-way? Do we need that?
Yep, we have that.
Okay, I don't know.
Yep.
Okay, we do. Okay.
I'm glad you came. Thank you for coming. Thank
Okay.
you for expressing anonymous concerns.
Okay.
And I'll give a little bit of background. So I intentionally tried to make sure that we as a committee did not make a decision in one day and
Okay.
just push this out to the ordinance. So I'm glad that after talking about it, we've gotten somebody who hadn't seen it before to notice.
Yep.
Today and the previous times we've been talking about it at the Common Council meeting that's coming up. Anyone from the public can come and talk about this if they wish. this map is not saying we're opening all of these roads. I completely agree with you that opening First Street is silly because we're not providing those other municipalities access to their shared road and making sure they're not being trapped into getting a ticket for trying to be legal. So that one I would cross off the list. The same with Grove Avenue.
Okay.
You can't get to anywhere. You'd just be driving up and down Grove Avenue, and we don't want that.
Okay.
So this would be a good example is the one that I go to all the time on 2 Mile Avenue from 16th to 28th Street. All of the houses on that road are Grand Rapids houses.
Mhm.
If I were one of those residents and I lived there, I would think I can use my UTV because I'm a Grand Rapids resident. This is a Grand Rapids road. I'm going to exit and come back.
Going the correct direction with the flow of traffic, right?
Correct. But if they were to go in the correct direction with the flow of traffic, that's technically a Wisconsin Rapids road. So they could be fined and ticketed for it.
Yeah.
And we don't want that either. We want to be good neighbors. So I think tonight, if we go through the 4 pages of the map and take off those roads that don't make sense, and then add them to our existing ordinance, like Pepper. You can't get to Pepper. Let's take Pepper off the list.
Yeah. Well, I can see where the people in that subdivision are trying to get out to get to Golf Course Road, I think. I understand that totally. There's that one little section, but, I mean, I was gonna talk about the truck routes. That's the worst truck route is that Riverwood Lane, whatever it's called. I mean, the trucks should be taking Golf Course Road the back way, but whatever. But I'm just kind of curious because it was portrayed that an anonymous residents from Port and Grand Rapids rose this issue. Okay, are they city residents who own land in Port and Grand Rapids, or are they Port and Grand Rapids residents who asked to bring this about? And if so, why are city resources being used to accommodate? We're city residents, we voted on it, whatever. I don't know. It's just kind of, I mean, and anybody on this body here, do any of you own land in Grand Rapids or Port that will be affected by this? If so, you probably should abstain from voting. Thank you.
No, and you are correct. The individuals who contacted me are not Grand Rapids, or are not City of Wisconsin Rapids residents, but they live in the areas where they're surrounded by the city, and they want to be able to use their open roadways. I do own property, or my husband and I do own property in Grand Rapids. We are not impacted by this decision or any ATV, UTV decision made by the council. Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. Joe, if this becomes, a reality of changing everything here, who's going to pay or install the various signage that would go in? Where would that money come from, or who would be putting the signs up?
Well, I guess it'd be the city that would be responsible for erecting those signs. And I guess if there's some existing dollars in one of the signage budgets to utilize, or, I guess it'd have to come from existing accounts in order to do that.
Well, then you would either have to approach any clubs that would be there, or we would have to use city funds.
Yeah, I don't know of any outside dollars that would be available to pay for it.
Okay, well, that's something that we probably would, well, if this does become a reality, I think we're going to have to make a decision on that too then. Thank you.
Since we already have an ordinance, we're only required to put signs on cross-secting streets off of our currently open road on Griffith. And I don't think we have those up yet. But I feel like we should also have them up on the streets that are half, if we choose not to do this, then we should also have them up on the streets that are half closed. If that's our road and we're saying no ATVs and UTVs on half the street, we should put them there.
So technically, right now, if somebody's coming from Grand Rapids on Griffith and heading towards Walmart, if they cross that one street, it's technically illegal?
No,
The-
that's the one that's open by our ordinance.
Oh, it is, okay.
The county has, well, the county has County Road Z all the way open, so there's that sign. We don't have signs that say Lincoln Street off of Griffith is closed. We should. I'm comfortable crossing roads off the list that should be off of it.
And I feel like that's just complicating it more, to be honest with you. I mean, now you're gonna say, well, this portion of Port Edwards is not, but this one is, and, I mean, I understand First Street, so technically somebody that lives on First Street then can go either direction,
Correct.
Right. where before they would have to cross our side to get to the Port Edwards side, which would be a violation.
Right.
Okay.
Do we want to sit with the maps and consider them until next month, or do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to open up the routes that are on the map. I don't know what else you need on that motion, but again, I think cutting some out and removing some is just gonna complicate the issue even more. And if these are truly the ones that are both sided, then I think we should just approve those.
Go ahead, Paul.
Wouldn't it just make more sense to take 10 minutes to go through each sheet? Because there's some of them that are on the map that don't pay to be open.
Because it's a dead end or something?
No, well, so I think we said it multiple times. First Street South, there is no Port Edwards or Grand Rapids residents that live on First Street South, so it's not serving anybody except for Wisconsin Rapids residents.
Correct. But if somebody on First Street then wanted to use that Port Edward Street, they couldn't because they can't technically cross the street to go. Right?
Right, but that's what I'm saying is that road really can't be used anyways, so why have it on the map?
I get
Well-
what you're saying, because half of it could be open, because
Yes.
you,
So half of it is open, right?
yeah,
Port Edward side?
I guess in theory, but they'd have to come from the airport to get onto it.
Right. But by opening this section, then somebody that lives on First Street could technically go both ways. I mean, you could get all the way to Grand Rapids from First Street
because you take First Street to 2 Mile to
to
Sampson.
Sampson and go, right?
But just to add to that, though, back to Dove Avenue and that portion of Whitrock Avenue, you know, they are, I guess, maybe not 50/50 roadways, but there are some things that are colored on here that are at least shown to say, hey, there's a difference here, but Dove Avenue, I think, isn't a viable option unless, yeah, I mean, it doesn't go anywhere, but.
Let's go quickly by each page. I'm looking at the first page on, first map on page 10, going from left to right.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
we do have a motion on the floor. Are we acknowledging that that motion has died?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, moving on page 10 from left to right, we've got First Street and 2 Mile. Any question on removing? No. All right.
I would say yes. I mean, as stated by staff here, that it doesn't make sense to open up that portion as it does not go anywhere. So I would like to see that removed.
Objection to removing First Street?
Well, like I stated my case, I'd keep it. I understand half of it's open and half of it isn't, so it's just like any other street that we're going to open up both sides. Even though it doesn't necessarily service somebody from Port Edwards, it still services somebody from Rapids that can get to Grand Rapids from there.
The point here, in my mind, is to address access for the residents of the municipalities that have open ATV routes, not to provide access for Rapids residents.
With that, I'll be the tiebreaker vote and say we'll remove First Street. 2 Mile from First Street to a little past Sampson. There is residents of Grand Rapids on the side of Sampson. Do we move that entire section to decrease the amount of signs, knowing that one resident could be negatively impacted, one Grand Rapids individual?
And that's between Sampson and the city spot there, between the two yellow dots?
Correct.
Not finding where you're talking, Maddie.
I mean, I guess if we're opening up for those people that are in Grand Rapids, then you have to open up the section between the two yellow dots, but not the rest of 2 Mile.
Right.
I mean, we either got to do it one way or the other. We can't piecemeal it, I guess.
Agreed. Okay. Cliff Street. I believe that portion is all. That's all Grand Rapids. Right?
Good with that one.
There is on the north side of Cliff Street, or the north section that's highlighted there is a 50-50 shared roadway segment there for 3 lots, I think. 2 or 3 lots.
Okay.
I'm
Good.
good with Cliff Street.
What was that?
I'm good with Cliff Street.
Great. Moving to Lincoln and Whitrock. Any objection to, or any thoughts on removing?
Again, it's providing a viable route for Grand Rapids residents. So yes, I'm good with that one.
Okay. We've got the section of Whitrock from 8th Street to, I think it's Blue Iris Court. I would say we'd take that one off, only because those are Grand Rapids residents, but there's no connection to any open route by using that portion of Whitrock.
Agreed.
Okay, then we've got 16th Street from, it's a cul-de-sac there, to 2 Mile. That gives access to the property owners that they are there, so I'd say that one should stay, as well as 16th from, or 2 Mile from 16th to 28th. And then the portion of 20th Street from 2 Mile to Airport would remain. And the portion of Airport Avenue that is on the map. And removing Grove Avenue. Okay, what did we miss here? Lincoln Street to Bryanwood, that provides access, so we'll keep that one on the map. I'm not sure what road this is off 8th Street that looks half city, half non-city. But I think individuals there would have to go out to 8th Street and drive on 8th Street, which is not open, so that would be removed. And then the city road, the city highlighted portion of Lincoln Street, I think should be removed leading out to Griffith. 9th Street. Should be added. 10th and 12th as well. And then 16th Coon Avenue and 20th Street from Coon Avenue to Griffith. Did I miss any on that map?
That's everything.
Okay.
That little section of Cook Avenue, did we have that by Cook Avenue?
The entire section, the whole, it's that entire section, there's no portion of the roadway is actually Cook Avenue. Cook Avenue
Okay.
ends there, and then that's 20th Street. That goes all the way through.
Okay.
So we wouldn't have to put a sign on each side of the, I think it's like a 50-foot section. We'd just take 20th all the way through from Airport to 16th.
Did you have 11th Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, page 11. This is off of Plover Road and Baker. These roads, ooh. So 22nd and Baker Street. Are there properties there that are non-city properties?
They're undeveloped.
Okay.
That's between the daycare and Washington Street on Highway 54 there. They're not developed by anything right now.
Okay, then I'd say that we'd take that one off.
22nd Street. and Baker.
Then we've got Saratoga Street. That doesn't look like it has any property owners there. They look like vacant parcels and business. Come on up, Tom.
Tom Rome, 1220 22nd Street North. I guess I have a question, listening to this, and I don't have any maps in front of me, but I guess a question to me is, or to ask is, why are we doing this? Why and by whom?
I guess I don't understand the question.
What?
I don't understand by whom. What do you mean by whom?
Who has requested?
Matt-
Well,
yeah.
Maddie, but has Grand Rapids people or others requested this to do?
You'd have to ask her. I
And
don't-
what is the city? I don't see the reason for it. They
So-
have what they have what they have. There's nothing that says we have to do anything. It's fine as it is. Leave it as it is. There was a referendum not too long ago.
So the
I think
reason,
you're spinning your wheels, and I don't think you quite reached the solid ground under the mud yet. This reminded me somewhat of the clown show in Washington. I see no reason to do this. I guess I see an intent that you want to do it. with how the news is out nowadays, there is very few people in this community that are even aware of what's going on. With non-existent newspaper, and those that really pay attention on their phones, and it's really very few that really pay attention, other than highlight that somebody writes on Facebook. When this started, boy, 3 years ago or whatever, this place was half packed on an afternoon of people that just wanted to get from one side of the town to the other side of town. So they didn't have to trailer their scooter to get from one to the other. And that didn't work. That was an afternoon meeting. I was there. To me, I'd have, and I'm not voting, I don't have a vote. I just recommend that you say no. And leave it as is.
Thank you. Okay, we left off at Saratoga Street on page 11, which I removed. 32nd Street does not have any residents there, so I'd say take that portion of 32nd Street off. But leave Chestnut. I'd like someone else to confirm that one, as the property that we own is very close to that. Even though I'm not impacted by this decision, it would be my neighbors.
What's the reason for taking that to Highway 54? Is it just the boundary, or, I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense to extend it. You know, what is that?
I think taking it to 23rd would be adequate to get the individuals on the, what is that, south side of the road, who are Grand Rapids?
Yeah.
Onto Chestnut, out to 32nd, and then into Grand Rapids.
That I'd agree with.
So not the portion of Chestnut from 23rd to 54. Okay, I believe I missed 28th Street. And leave that one. And 32nd and Kingston Road. I don't see any homes there that are impacted. And it goes out to a closed road. So I'd say remove that one. Page 12. Easy one. Bono Avenue.
Is there residents there? It's hard to tell with the,
Those would be city residents.
yeah, that one can be removed.
And then page 13, Seneca Road should remain. And Pepper Avenue, I did not realize there's the cul-de-sac that leaves Pepper to get to golf course, or leaves the cul-de-sac to be on Pepper to go to Golf Course Road. So I would say not the section of Pepper between the yellow dots on the map. Oops, sorry. From the first yellow square on the map to the roadway that the cul-de-sac is would not be open. Nor would the Rapids. Is that Rapids? Yes. Nor would the Blue Heron cul-de-sac, as those are city parcels. And then again, First Street and 2 Mile are removed. I've been making notes on my copy, Joe. You can have this one. Any other adjustments? Comments? Go ahead, Dean.
I have a quick question. What is the definition of corporate limit roadway?
So I guess it would just be any roadway that runs along the corporate limits. And if it's a shared one, it's usually split down the middle of the road. In some cases, we've got a combination of shared where it's split down the middle and then intermixed between 100% city or 100% township roadway.
So how can we change anything after a referendum voted not to be on it? That's my question.
Yeah, because I can't remember when that was, when the county wanted to open Griffith and we had questions about who owns that portion of Griffith. That came to council and I believe it passed 6-2 to create a city ordinance and allow for ATV, UTV traffic within the city. So this is not, that was passed was not the same ordinance that was on the referendum. There.
So I thought that was just that, I don't remember exactly how that went. I thought that was just that one cross that we allowed on that.
Yes, and this would just be adding to those pieces. So not only do we have that piece of Griffith, but now we're saying the individuals who live in Grand Rapids who are not trying to violate the rules by traveling on a Grand Rapids road on one side of the street is ours. So they can now leave and there's no enforcement issues with it. Grand Rapids police know the rules, Rapids police know the rules. They can be pulled over on that road without question.
So this is like a good neighbor policy? Is that what I'm just saying, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I don't want to trap anybody into breaking the rules. And I think it should be clear that we don't allow ATVs and UTVs on the city roads, which impact city residents. But these other ones are like this weird gray area, the Wild West roads. All right, then I will make a motion to approve the roads as indicated on these maps. But I would like to see them in a list come back next month to make sure we have them covered.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Palmquist, second by Austin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, 3-0. Okay,
Maps are gonna be before this counts, or that's next month?
Next month.
next month. Yep.
Thanks.
Put it in a nice, neat list so we don't have to look at the maps, or have asked Joe to bring back a list with the maps.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're not gonna move on this till January. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Item 5, review and consider removing all 2-hour parking restrictions and replacing with no overnight parking restrictions. This was a referral from Alderperson Plus. I did speak with him and a constituent today. He is unable to be here, so I will cover this one briefly. Essentially, there was some concerns from businesses downtown and challenges that are faced when we have a 2-hour parking restriction, which rolled into why do we have 2-hour parking restrictions? And to simplify it, we should just get rid of them. When I was speaking with Plus this afternoon, he had indicated that he had a similar conversation with a resident, and the overnight parking might not be, adding overnight parking signs in replacement of the 2-hour signs might be a little egregious in that we don't want individuals to make poor choices because they can't leave their vehicle overnight, and we have parking restrictions for 48 hours. So rather than replacing the 2-hour parking signs with no overnight parking, it was brought up that we just take all the 2-hour parking signs down and follow our 48-hour parking restriction. And with that, we have a map with all of the 2-hour parking restrictions.
For me, I'm not sure I can get on board with this one. As much as I'd like to, particularly the west side, we've talked about this in recent history here, and actually created some permitted parking because of an issue on the west side downtown with a particular business and employees kind of parking is all over the place, including 2-hour parking and just gambling that they're not going to get a ticket. And it happens. It happens every day. And I think if you remove those 2-hour parking restrictions in those particular locations, those businesses might be hard pressed to have any parking for their patrons. So to me, I mean, west side downtown, I don't think is an option here to remove. I mean, I understand the 2-hour limit can be a bit pressing. I mean, there's a hair studio down on the west side that, you know, my wife uses, and sometimes her appointments can go 3 to 4 hours, and I understand that part, and I'd be willing, if it's possible, to extend, you know, from 2 to 3 hours if that's something that might help, if it's possible. But outside of that, I feel like, you know, if we open that up, folks are just going to try to park as close as they can to their destination, whether they're a business, they're patronizing a business or not. I think it would be more of a hardship than anything. And really it would make, you know, not that it would be a bad thing in my eyes, but it would remove the permitted parking completely. I would say that wouldn't be an option anymore either. So without hearing Plus's details on this, really that's my stance. I can't get behind that.
I would agree 100% with Ryan. I think this was created, you know, during the daytime from 9 to 5, whatever it is. Just take, for instance, downtown with Jennings and Aaron's, that section, that's 2 hours. All of those employees then are going to be parked in front of their business because why do they want to walk? So now all day long you have employees blocking customer spots, and exactly what Ryan said, now there's no parking for anybody. So I think we have to keep that, and it's only till 5 o'clock in the evenings when people are down there doing their thing. I think there's plenty of time to park, so I would be against it as well.
Do we want to leave this on for next month in hopes that Blues can come, or are we going to let this one stay in the committee?
I don't have an issue with that. I don't see my stance changing on it.
I probably won't be in the spot next time, but my stance wouldn't change either.
All right, discussed, no action taken. Item 6, review and consider snow removal policy changes.
I really don't have anything on this. I just figured the last time we looked at it was 2021. And we had a week of snow, and what better time to talk about it if you guys have ideas, changes that you want to have. Like I said, the last time we looked at it was 4 years ago. There are things that are missing from this, just so you're aware. There's attachments that simply have assignments of our staff to do certain things, and sidewalks that we plow. We're just in the midst of going through and updating all of that based on the stuff that's going on down by the Triangle development in front of the courthouse and things like that. So I didn't really want to waste your time with that, because it's just information for you. But I will bring it to you as soon as we get it done, if you want to see it. Like I say, it's where the what sidewalks we shovel, what sidewalks we plow, alleys that we plow, where the sandboxes are located at. We do have something actually that I do have to bring forward once Grand Rapids and I come up with the added list. We just started working on this last week. There are some agreements that we have with Grand Rapids that they plow some of our streets, we plow some of theirs, just because it makes sense to do it that way, and that hasn't been updated since 2019. But we're doing things that make sense, but it's just not on the policy, so it'd be good to update that and have that current as well. So again, I'm not looking for any changes unless you guys have concerns or comments on how we do things. Then again, there is a draft of when a snow emergency is declared. That was also part of the package. And then the policy that we put in place as far as when a private mailbox gets damaged and things like that. So again, just wanted to bring this stuff to your attention and be more than happy to make changes if there's a desire.
I just had a question on the 4 inches under snow accumulation. Has that always been 4 inches?
Yeah, as long as I've been here.
Okay, but
So,
obviously if it's during normal hours of operation, you just plow anyways.
yeah, there's a lot of times where those situations, we use them for training opportunities for backup staff. And then it's also accumulation. So,
Okay.
Let's take Saturday and Sunday out of the mix. If we got 2 inches of snow on Monday, and then an inch of snow on Tuesday, and 2 inches on Wednesday, more than likely Wednesday we'd be plowing because we've accumulated over 3 days more than 4 inches.
Thank you.
I didn't see anything in the policy other than my recommendation to have the declaration of a snow emergency added instead of being a draft. That needed to be changed. I think it's a helpful reminder to all of us and our residents how snow removal works. And I appreciate that you brought it forward because it hasn't been reviewed in a while. Thank you, Paul. Discussed with no action on item 6.
Just one question, quick here, Paul. There are some sanding operations that'll go on, right? I mean, you might get you might get 3 inches of snow, say, but over time, you guys are out there hitting some of the intersections and whatnot with sand. Is that listed in here? I'm not really seeing it.
Yeah, so that would go under, 1 second, Ryan. So that is under section 5, the de-icing plan. So that there talks about how priority 1 and priority 2 and priority 3 are done with salt, and then secondary streets are done with just want to
My point is you guys are using your judgment as well in some of these scenarios. Is that
Yeah.
accurate? Yeah.
Definitely, yep. And so to your point, like today, we were out, part of the thing is the contractor that we buy sand from, and then we mix it ourselves. We have a limited amount, so we're kind of trying to stretch it until we get restocked, which is middle to late next week. But yeah, if it snowed, if we plowed everything today, and with the snow that was expected tomorrow night or whatever, we would just go and get the real bad spots and not go through all the residential streets and sand everything, so yeah. The policy is black and white policy, but there is latitude for myself to make decisions to best serve the citizens.
And it is sand salt at all times, or is it just sand at some points?
It's sand salt with the salt being less than 5%. It's strictly in there to keep the sand from becoming a mass.
Item 7, review and consider intersection control evaluation along East Jackson Street and select the proposed traffic control. Joe?
Thank you. So we have completed the intersection control evaluation, at least a draft of that document. The first 15 pages or so of it I did include in the packet. There's more appendices. If you're interested in seeing all of it, by all means, I can share that with you. But there were 4 alternatives that were considered. Alternative number 1 is a two-way stop control at both East Jackson and 2nd Street, as well as East Jackson and 3rd Street. Alternative number 2 was an always stop control situation. So again, at both of the intersections that we're focused on here, 2nd Street and 3rd Street, both of those being considered for an always stop control. And then alternative number 3 was 2 roundabouts, one at 2nd and again one at 3rd. And then there was a 4th alternative for an always stop control T intersection so basically at 2nd Street, T intersection was provided, kind of shown in figure 5 in the packet. I guess in summary, some of the things that we were looking at are the use of the space, how much private property or non-right-of-way property would be needed in order to accommodate the different types of control. What's the overall level of service that would be achieved by that type of traffic control at those locations. And so the way that that's analyzed is by a level of service. And so a level of service of A is a really good level of service, whereas a level of service of D or F, F is like a failing grade. That's not really an acceptable level of service. So alternative number 1, that was the two-way stop control. It was not a recommended control type because it does not provide acceptable levels of operations at 2nd Street. And furthermore, at 3rd, there is insufficient sight distances due to the hill coming down that a two-way stop control isn't actually a feasible option at 3rd Street. Additionally, alternative number 4 is not being recommended either because it creates as shown in figure 5, you can see it visually there. It does create a significant loss of developable space, requires a lot of real estate, and also does not provide the highest level of service. So the options that are viable options to consider would be alternative number 2 or number 3 or combination of the 2 of those. And the one that we're, at least from staff level, kind of the preferred recommendation is the use of roundabouts, primarily for the reason that traffic continues to keep moving. They provide high level of service. Compact roundabouts will provide safe crossing with splitter islands for pedestrians and the least amount of delay. A very close second alternative, a recommended alternative would be a roundabout at 2nd, where most of the traffic would be, and then the use of an always stop control at 3rd. That would keep that intersection at 3rd a little bit more compact, tighter, and although it would cause vehicles to stop, it would be a reasonable alternative to a 2 roundabout situation. So that's kind of a very quick summary of the evaluation that was done. But they did factor in all the traffic that is currently at 1st Street, shifting that over onto 2nd Street, and what a future outlook would be for forecasting of future vehicles. and then also considering the proper design vehicles that would need to be accommodated, or, you know, that might be traveling through the downtown area, that they can still safely navigate the intersection.
Joe, on the roundabout one,
Yes.
are the businesses or the properties around there gonna be affected more because of the roundabout? Like, do you have to take more of that property?
So we did have a kind of a pre-design sort of, you know, based on the size of the compact roundabout. We did set that in to see, you know, what sort of, because I didn't want to recommend a roundabout if it was going to largely impact those businesses. And based on the size and the positioning, it's very little. They're like just the very corners at the intersections, perhaps, maybe a parking stall, you know, at East Jackson, 3rd Street, that's a city parking lot. But it's right in the corners that there is some impact that may be mitigated throughout the design process, where we can tighten things up and try to avoid any impact to the adjacent properties. But certainly no impacts to the buildings or anything like that, for sure.
Thank you.
I think a four-way stop at Second and Jackson would probably become a traffic nightmare, with as much traffic coming through, what would be coming through on Second, you know, being that First Street is going to be out. Can you speak to the cost difference roundabout to controlled intersection?
So there is a little bit more hard surfacing with a roundabout than, say, what an all-way stop intersection would be. But that's largely the cost difference, is the additional pavement, as well as some additional signage, and there may be some additional street lighting required as well to make sure it's adequately lit. Those are the large cost differentials. As compared to a regular all-way stop, though, it's really just some additional hard surfacing is really the largest cost item.
Okay. What about Second? I guess to the south and west there. What does that look like on a one-way street?
So it would be, it could be two ways. It could be where the circle is shifted more north, and the direction of the one-way street at Second, heading northbound, would just be another leg of the intersection, just kind of right-hand turn into the circle. It could also be such that that circle could be moved further to the south, and the one-way direction shifted to head southbound, and, you know, then it would just be another outlet to the roundabout. But by shifting the one-way to a southerly direction, that would allow that roundabout to stay further to the south. So both of those would be options to consider, but in both cases, that's one of the biggest advantages to a roundabout, at least from a geometric standpoint, is that you can tie into them with any side street, really, and make it work.
Okay. I think, as I stated, the roundabout on Second and Jackson is probably the option that makes the most sense for the flow of traffic. I don't know about 3rd Street in Jackson. I think a four-way control there, in my mind, would probably be more suitable and cost-effective. That's all.
So like a hybrid, one circle and one stop? Yeah, that's kind of how I was leaning as well. I agree with the roundabout at Second Street is a must. I just don't know, as you get down further, if that would, I mean, it's such a short street, if it would confuse people. I know when you have roundabouts so close together, they always freak out, and so I guess I wouldn't be opposed to a stop sign there either.
Do we have an official selection on the proposed traffic control? You'd like us to select one, right, Joe?
Yeah, the preferred recommendation, just because both the two roundabout option and then the hybrid, where it's a roundabout at Second and an all-way stop at Third, I mean, they're so close. Either one could be chosen. They're both, I guess, staff recommended options. And so, you know, if the committee has a preference on one of those, that would be completely fine. In the packet, we had recommended as a kind of preferred staff recommendation that the double roundabout, but just based on the kind of just tipping of the scale a bit, that between the two options, that the roundabouts keep people moving. Whereas the all-way stop, there's a little bit more delay, but cognizant of the fact that two roundabouts close together, and these that would make three all within that block essentially, it may be too much.
Yeah.
You know, although there's nothing wrong with it, the traffic would operate well. It's more of if there's a public perception of it.
I'll move to go with a hybrid option, roundabout at Second and Jackson, and a four-way controlled at Third and Jackson.
I'd second that motion.
Motion by Austin, second by Tim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have that one, 3-0. Item 8, review engineering and street monthly activity report. Engineering's first. Joe.
Oh, boy.
It's listed first.
All right, so for the month of November, as expected, you know, permits and Digger's Hotline locates are definitely dropping off here now for the season. We finally made the final payment for the ITS standalone signal grant for Chase and High Street. The contractor finished their work and the annual testing was completed. And so we've packaged up the reimbursement request for that, and we'll be sending that to the DOT here in the very near future. Continuing to move forward on our project designs for next year. Let's see. We do have a couple roundabout options that have been put together by the DOT for the Griffith Avenue and 8th Street intersection. We do not have any costs associated with those options yet, and the DOT is continuing to develop that information and proposing a meeting in the next 2 weeks to go over those options and those costs with the city and the county. We did just finish a bunch of utility audits for the stormwater utility based upon permit activity, you know, any raising permits or new developments that changed impervious areas. So that information will be headed over to the Waterworks and Lighting utility for billing purposes. And lastly, we've got the 32nd Street Railroad Crossing and Kingston Road Railroad Grade Crossing. They're still on the monthly report. I did talk to the new Public Works individual at CN. They are aware of both of these items, and they're working with their legal team on and internal staff stuff before they get back to the city. So I don't have a timeline on those yet, but they are aware of them, and they'll get back to us. So thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions, statements? No? All right, going back in the packet and next on the list to the street department monthly activity report. Paul?
So the report is attached. For the most part, the month of November was cleaning up. All of our construction projects for the year are completed. The only thing that we have left to do is on McKinley Street and Harrison Street is to do the finish grading of the black dirt and seeding. That'll be done in the spring of the year. Maintenance end of things, we completed 2 yard waste collections, assisted with the WIA State Cross Country Meet. Staff spent time going through checking their plow route or finishing checking their plow routes for unsafe situations and or marking grasses or yards or things like that that come out. We did have a culvert pipe fail on us this spring that was over on the Romansky Ditch, which is crosses underneath the undeveloped piece of Chase Street to the far west of town. So we finished that, put that back into normal working conditions. Have about 90% of the playground installed at the zoo for the Parks Department. Just some things, swing set and fall protection to be completed in the spring with that. We're currently crushing material out at our pit for our use for next year. Our sign shop spent a fair amount of time working on getting things ready for the Christmas, installing lights and banners. We installed the flags for Veterans Day, and then after the Veterans Day holiday, we removed the flags and then the Memorial Walk banners and returned those to Rich and Marilyn Knoyer so that they could get those back to the families for them for the season. I believe Rich had said that they're going to purchase new banners yearly now instead of trying to reuse them because some people have been part of this for 2 or 3 years and they're starting to get a little ragged or whatever. So, and then our shop again spent most of the time just doing standard stuff, getting the fleet ready for winter. We did have to replace a couple hydraulic pumps on the garbage trucks. And then we use snow tires on the majority of our loaders, and so we took the construction tires off and put snow tires on so that they could plow. Then one thing that was kind of neat, totally unexpected, this last Tuesday I attended the Wisconsin Asphalt Pavers Association conference down in the Wisconsin Dells. And the city was nominated for an award and recognized the efforts of my staff and then also what our engineering department does. So if I could just take probably 30 seconds and give you a Reader's Digest version of what was said at the conference. The city constructs roughly 1 mile to 1.25 miles of roadway a year. In addition to the new or reconstruction projects for the last 5 years, we have been able to redo an additional mile of roadway with either a mill and overlay and or pavement replacement project. The city's asphalt program focuses on providing the traveling public with a good, smooth, and safe ride. One of the ways that accomplishes this is by raising the manholes with an innovative process once the paving is complete, demonstrating a forward-thinking strategy, balancing efficiency, safety, and long-term performance. With past practices, the city recognizes distress issues with settlement, reflective cracking around the perimeter, and premature maintenance concerns. The city that led them to try out a new technique with the Mr. Manhole process that can cut up to a 62-inch hole around a structure. The city purchased the cutter in 2020, starting out using it only on manhole repairs and mill and fill jobs, to now the last 3 years using it additionally 100% of the time on new construction projects. The city staff can complete 10 to 12 manholes in a day with a crew of 2 cutting and a crew of 2 following behind and setting the structures to grade, then pouring them back in flush to the adjacent asphalt for a smooth, low maintenance, and high quality ride. The speed of this technique and quality results have saved the city's maintenance time and effort while gaining the results of an even smoother ride. New construction and pavement replacement projects had 70 manholes completed this year, with approximately 300 completed since 2020. In addition to this innovative process, we would also like to recognize the city for their continued use of Warmix asphalt. Warmix not only lowers greenhouse gas emissions, but it also is an effective tool to achieve sustainability goals within the asphalt industry. We sincerely thank and congratulate the city for the innovative efforts that they have incorporated in their paving program, which have greatly contributed to improve infrastructure and enhance quality of life for its residents.
Thank you, Paul.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Agreed.
You can definitely tell, especially on the manhole covers in non-new construction roads that are repaired, you know, a significant difference in the efficiency of being able to come in after the fact and take care of that instead of trying to grade to it has got to be a big help as well, so.
Yeah, actually, so again, I knew nothing about this. I got a text message in the deer stand saying that congratulations, you received this. I'm assuming that it was American Asphalt. I'm not sure that recommended us or whatever. But through the process, with our, I guess, really looking at it on the new construction of things, we are saving probably anywhere from $400 to $600 a manhole when we do it this way, so.
Thank you. No other comments? Moving on to review of the 2025 construction status report.
So the latest report was provided outside of the packet. It wasn't ready until this, just a few days ago. And I guess the costs that are shown, I think, are primarily completed at this point. There might be a few little things coming in here or there yet, but the bulk of all the costs related to the projects are completed and updated on this this monthly report. So as you can see, there's still a deficit of around $146,000 on the street construction account for this construction season. Working with the finance director, took a look at our other accounts. The things at bid time in the spring when we opened bids, knowing that the bid costs were higher than what we anticipated, we did make adjustments at that time to repeal some of our concrete pavement patching work. That's part of the street construction account. Rather than doing closer to $200,000 worth of work there, we only did $150,000, and we did similar reductions on the sidewalk removal and replacement in the sidewalk outlay account. That doesn't show up in this street construction account. It's a separate account. But there is a surplus in that of right around $146,000, which would cover this deficit here on the street construction account. And then storm and sanitary and water main accounts, you know, they all turned out okay, so.
Thank you, Joe. Questions? Comments? Right. Item 10, review the referral list. I feel like now, since item 4 has been added to the CIP, it could be removed? Or do we want to leave it until it's completed?
So Third Street is added to the CIP. I don't believe Fourth Street was added,
Okay.
but
Th-
that's just the only distinction I see there, but.
Then let's leave 4 for now. All other items can stay. And I do not have, or I did not receive any additional items to forward. Anything else on the referral list? Great. Meeting adjourned at 6:58 p.m., which is item 12. Thank you.